Jackie Chan, amazing kung fu, a beautiful soundtrack, actors that are actual Shaolin warrior monks, and messaging that is incredibly on point. The Shaolin Temple movie from 2011 is the whole package. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's a bit embarrassing to admit it, but it may have planted the initial seed in my head to go to the Shaolin Temple back in 2012. I see what you did there.
Inception.
Respect. But how accurate is the movie really? How close is it to the real thing? Are these the right clothes? Does the temple look like this? Did we train like that? And also, what's the deal with these guys?
They took my treasure.
The movie is mostly about one man's journey to the temple and his enlightenment, but I'm going to put all that to the side for now and just focus on the authenticity, not the quality of storytelling or acting. I will be spoiling some parts of it towards the end, but I don't think it makes the payoff any less worth your while should you decide to watch it. Yeah, here we go. Very important video for me. Let's go.
你现在被通缉，无非就是想留在我们少林寺避难嘛。
Yeah, the clothing is very accurate. I have my robe right here, around here somewhere. Finally, not the bright orange that you see still too much in so many movies. The bright yellow orange is still used in like special occasions, but usually it's all the gray stuff. And this movie plays in winter, and in Ranton it gets incredibly cold. So they're wearing the winter version with all the patches on top. It's very authentic. You see that a lot in the temple. Some higher level masters nowadays do wear different brown color variations, but I don't know if this was the case back then in the 1920s when this takes place. Yeah, the entrance looks very good. The temple itself seems much wider here and more open. Also grayer, although I think that's just the color palette of the movie because very sad vibes. The temple nowadays is all gold and red and green. Like, it's very vibrant. You can tell that they're doing well. It's in good shape. There's a really beautiful addition here, and that is the water between the walkways. I love that. I've seen that in some temples in China, but not in the Shaolin Temple. And I looked at some old photographs, and I don't think this was ever the case. At least it's not now. I personally kind of prefer this depiction here, but it might be a grass is always greener type of situation. The temple mostly has like small trees planted between the stones. It looks good too, no hate.
大师兄，又来了200多个。总共
Yeah, there are very poor people living right outside the temple gates. Nowadays, don't expect people to live right outside the temple doorstep or anywhere close to it, or these types of like normal normies. People either live in Wangzhigou, which is the closest. It's like a 10-minute walk up a hill. This is where I lived, and even a lot of monks live there because the temple is at maximum capacity. Some monks even have to commute back and forth from Dongfeng to the temple. It's you know, just another job for many of them. The Shaolin Temple is inside what's called the Shaolin Temple Scenic Area. It's a tourist term. There's so much going on there. You have the Pagoda Forest, Sungshan Mountains, the Tago Kung Fu School, the Wushuguan Kung Fu School, the Damo Cave. It's a very active and bustling community. But there are no like average people living there. Everyone who's in this area is to some extent or another involved in martial arts. This is called the Lohan Shui Jiao, sleeping arhat. It does exist in a few variations in some kung fu forms. Very cool. Yeah. This exercise I've only seen either kids do or very few warrior monks that focus on something called Rangong, which is like the flexibility stuff. Not everyone has to do this, not everyone can do this. It requires a lot more than just the normal split. I have the split, but I can't hold the position like that. I can do it long enough to take a good picture. Yeah, but you do have these poles all around the temple, and it's kind of a must-have for every Shaolin Kung Fu training ground. They're not harmless though. A friend of mine once slipped and fell and landed chest first on one of the lower poles and almost broke a few ribs. It's pretty bad. He was out of commission for a while. Kids sometimes have to hold this position for half an hour to an hour. It's very tough. They cry like crazy. It hurts. It's not easy to watch. But you can't love the sausage if you hate how it's made. Controlled suffering makes them very strong. They learn to ignore their thoughts. The body is always stronger than the mind. Violence at Shaolin. Probably gonna do a video on that soon. Jackie Chan plays the temple cook, and the food inside the temple is indeed vegetarian, no surprise to you. I had a fun experience though. Once in my first year, my master invited me right after training to eat, but not far outside the temple, and not in the city, just right in the back of the temple. There's a broken wall, and right behind that broken wall, there was a small ramen bar. When we went inside, I saw monks sitting all around enjoying their tasty beef noodle soup. He told me, if you train Kung Fu, you need to eat meat. I did not argue with him. Yeah, handing out food is still a thing. The temple does do that. My group was once brought all the way to Zhengzhou, which is a pretty big city, with a bus to hand out a soup or like some sort of sludge to people in the shopping mall for free. It was really cold. It was a really fun experience, and it was cool to fit. I felt really included. So a fond memory for me for sure. I love this. I love this so much. The temple does not have an outside training ground like this, unfortunately. It may have one now, but when I was there, we had 2 training halls. One was very old, one was new. The old one got torn down. In summer, we trained outside mostly, and if the weather was good, we trained at the basketball court at Tizugo, or there's a water reservoir behind the temple where we train. It was really good. There's one street that leads through the temple on top of that. These indented stone floors that you see here, this is a reference to the 1000 Buddha Hall, which is the last hall in the Shaolin Temple. The stones there are like indented from centuries of Kung Fu training, so they say. It's very impressive, very beautiful hall. But don't forget, if you see monks train there in documentaries, nobody trains there, it's just for movies. 七星拳, 7-star fist. It's a very well-known form. I think it's one of the most famous Shaolin forms, and it's also one of the most beautiful ones. It's simple and beautiful. It's the second form I learned after Tongbei Quan. It's a classic. Group form exercises are very common. Almost every performance features them, and it's probably also one of my favorite things to do. It's a great feeling. 关节就是力量. Although groups are usually much smaller than this, at least in the temple, like usually 10 to 15 people. Before we continue any further, Resident Evil Village, Modern Warfare 2, game review. With Kung Fu in it. Check out my 2 new reviews that I just uploaded on my second channel. Ranton, very high quality, enjoy them. And God of War Ragnarok coming next. Stay tuned on Ranton. Alright, back to the movie. This is Dongge, by the way. He's just a kid in the movie, but I met him when he was already a master in Di Tang Quan and dog form. Shout out to everyone who has to do Di Tang Quan, the craziest thing you can do. Basically, how often can you hit the floor? That's the point of that form. He's an amazing master. He's incredibly good, but also very, very violent guy and very feared master. Yeah, okay, studying Buddhist scripture like this is common when you are a monk. Those guys that you typically associate with the temple, they often don't know much about Buddhism at all. Their primary interests are League of Legends, girls, and alcohol. Sorry to maybe burst someone's bubble, but this is just the way it is. They're still good guys, many of them. Some do end up getting into Buddhism on a voluntary basis. Yeah, but bottom line, when you visit the temple, don't expect to do this, but it's okay. Bring your own books, like I did.
心与意合，意与契合，气与力合。
心与意合，意与契合，气与力合. What the master's shouting here? Stop shouting at me. The 6 harmonies, liu he, something something. Heart and mind go together, mind and energy go together, energy and power go together. There are tons of different interpretations of it. Some are like neurological, the brain and the mind, and these are the inner harmonies. Then there are the outer harmonies. Elbows go with knees, hands go with feet, and shoulder go with your hip. Yeah, it's Buddhist stuff. It can help you or not. Make of it what you will. I've never seen this handstand walk, but we did have to crawl up and down the stairs on all 4s. That's actually one of the most common exercises that people typically associate with Shaolin, and it's true. We have to do that a lot, and it's fun. So why not? Yeah, I love this huge bell tower. This entire scene is so beautiful and yeah, so peaceful. There are bell towers in the temple. I've never been inside, sadly. I heard it a couple of times, but never been inside. I don't know. Why did I not ask to? Whatever. Anyways, the little kid here training outside is cool, looks cool. And it's not even that far removed from reality. There are usually 3 training sessions a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and then training in the evening is like voluntary and more self-guided. And when you're in the temple and you got nothing to do, then, you know, might as well train. But you will be training not in the beautiful temple areas, but in the designated training areas. Isn't it funny how in the Shaolin Temple, nobody really does Kung Fu in the nice parts of the temple? That only happens for cameras. Sucks.
俺不练武，不懂这些。练武是参禅，做饭也是参禅。
We're now getting to some of my favorite scenes of the movie. The messaging here is kind of unexpectedly good, you know? Being a good person and just being good at whatever you do is also a way to enlightenment. You don't need meditation or religion for that. Spirituality happens in here. It also touches on a paradox that has always bothered me a little bit.
武道，人生需要很多的经历和磨练。我说过多少次，离开少林寺。 出去看看吧。
People love the idea of the wise old man on the mountaintop, you know, that teaches you the sick moves. They also want to be that guy. but you're not that guy, pal. Trust me, you're not that guy. Nah, joke. But how exactly are you going to be a wise man when you spend your whole life in a secluded and safe space? You haven't seen anything of this world. The old man on the mountain is wise probably because he lived a very fulfilled life full of mistakes and experiences among people. You cannot shortcut that, all right? This is one of the problems with a large amount of Kung Fu teachers, I think. They're so young and they pretend like they have lived 10 lifetimes and so full of speeches and Kalendersprüche. Sag mal hier, ne? Bro, be real. Piano.
你不要看清自己，每个人都有每个人的用处。
I love this. Find your way. What you will notice throughout the movie is that it doesn't really show the monks as stoic or disconnected, enlightened superhumans, but as people. Very important. You know, feeling pain and sadness as their friends are taken from them, and they have a sense of humor, they curse, which is very accurate. They make mistakes and have distrust.
方丈不是说佛度有缘人吗？谁跟你有缘？
You might prefer it if they show the monks more according to the abstract ideals or how you would like them to live, like in the legends. But wherever you find humans, you will find human problems and human emotions, human imperfection. The movie shows mostly the stick, which is the temple's most iconic weapon. It's sort of the Shaolin signature weapon that everyone has to learn first. And also a super fun weapon, so why not? The action here is so incredibly well directed, very much what you can expect from a Chinese movie. Excellent martial arts and fight scenes. Nothing less would have been acceptable. What makes it even more surprising and impressive is that it goes in so deep into the values of Buddhism. And maybe it's not even that, you know? It's just a positive message overall. I cry every time I watch that movie. No kizzy. I admitted it. Forgiveness and letting go are extremely important to this movie. And they didn't have to be. It could have been a movie about, you know, the temple fighting off invaders and getting embroiled in a war, or just about the main dude, you know? He was bad and now he's good because the temple is so great. But it's not. They wanted to tell a personal story of growth through facing and accepting your past. And the movie doesn't let him off the hook either. With all the terrible things he's done and the violence he brought into this world, he must confront it. Because his past isn't done with him. So deep. In the end, it ends up costing him his life. His former student becomes the antagonist at some point, but even he gets a small redemption arc. It doesn't just end with Andy Lau in the hands of Buddha. After all the destruction and bloodshed, the new antagonist is saved by Andy Lau, only to face what he has done. The death he has caused, it's a sobering and it's a great scene. Him breaking out into tears and disgust and shock of himself makes it a truly outstanding finale. Really amazing movie. There's one, and I have to mention this, bad spot on this movie, and that's its portrayal of foreigners. Very typical for Chinese movies. A pinch of xenophobia and fear-mongering of all outsiders, completely unnecessary to make the movie work. Plus, historically inaccurate. The temple, it was destroyed by a Chinese warlord. Cringe, but also luckily not that important. They took my treasure.
Kill everyone in there! Fire!
If I've convinced you to watch this movie, just know that the acting is very Chinese. In other words, overacted. It's super dramatic. Imagine it a bit like theater. But for me, 10 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch you on the flippity floppy. Antoni out.